There has been a destructive force unleashed on this town such as I have never seen.
Oh my God, I don't believe this. This is not happening!
We have got a poltergeist!
Okay, well, folks, I can do a clearance, but it's not going to be cheap. Although I do offer a 6-month guarantee.
That fellow takes us totally for granted.
Hey, Stewart.
Cannot push spirits around!
Although they do escape.
Says that you're a fraud, but I've seen what you can do.
Give it up, Frank. Death ain't no way to make a living.
Tonight's Horror Channel movie review is Peter Jackson's cult comedy horror from 1995, The Frighteners, starring Michael J. Fox as a crooked con man who uses his access to the undead to manipulate people out of their money. Things take a turn when Frank takes on the case of a couple who believes they have a poltergeist, and the husband of the couple mysteriously turns up dead of a heart attack the next day. Fox becomes involved with his wife, but also talks to the husband Ray from Beyond the Dead and has to introduce him to the world of the undead in this bizarre scene at a graveyard. Take a look at this.
Been told to stay away! Sound off like you've got up here!
Yeah, well, it's a public place, Hiles.
I do not like you! You cannot bring your spooks in here without my permission! Disappear, scumbag! I am not one of your shitty little emanations, Bannister. You cannot push spirits around. You are scum, using spooks to put the frighteners on people. That makes me physically ill. We got a lot of lowlifes around here, and I will provide an armed response at the first sign of trouble. They must be contained.
Frank's interaction with that over-the-top drill sergeant Ghoulie as he has to get Ray in for his own funeral and introduce him to the afterlife is just a good example of how hit and miss this chiller is from Jackson, with a collection of ghosts being sort of shoehorned in, each with their own personality. At times it just feels a little bit too frantic and a little bit like that they're really like a collection of set pieces. At times it could have done with giving the characters and story a bit more time to breathe. Of course, it is a fond prestige to the V movie, and there's lots of excitement to be had, and there's lots of energy and colour and some fun fleshy practical effects. Fox is very much in his element as Frank. He has that sort of charisma and that sleaze, but also there's just something about him which is very relatable and likeable. There's a fair amount of slapstick humour, and the romance with him and the wife of the deceased Ray is actually very likeable. They have good chemistry, and their relationship does grow throughout the film. But certainly there's elements of Beetlejuice in this comedy horror, and unlike Beetlejuice, where you do actually get to know the characters and you do get downtime before the big set pieces, this is pretty relentless. There's some good cast in here as well. I mean, Jeffrey Combs is an absolute mad cameo as like the sort of scary, hammy FBI agent who clearly has an ulterior motive and pursues Fox's character. There are some good effects. There's also some ropey effects that haven't aged that well, but then I guess that's part of the charm. I guess that's part of the B-movie charm. And they look dated in a fun way. There's some good fleshy effects. But it is very hit and miss. As I said, it's so frantic at times. There's a museum scene, for example, which is very OTT, very sort of non-stop, and just kind of just too in your face. It's like another scene where it could have done with a bit of breathing. There's some good slapstick humour, but there's also some humour which is so in your face and so going for the obvious. At times it just feels like the Mask sort of thing, and I don't think this should be. Some of the best effects are like the practical ones, and I did, as I said, I did warm to the romance as the film went on, and overall, I think this comes down to a taste thing. I think I just like the style of this film and the nostalgia. I like the sort of slapstick gothic element that it was going for. Actually, I think an underrated performance is Lucy, Ray's wife. There's a nice scene in a restaurant actually where Michael J. Fox's character is like communicating with Ray from the other world to like tell Lucy what he's thinking. So you've got all three of them sitting there at the table, and things are going quite well. It's like their anniversary, and Fox is like passing on these messages, but at the same time, Lucy starts to open up about the fact that their relationship wasn't going very well. It was on like rocky territory, and in the end, things take a turn, and you can see like Lucy and Frank started to get closer, and so there's this. It's Ray's like, "You bitch," and then there's and then sort of he feels her hand to try and control. He's like, "Get your hand off my," and at one point he spills wine over him. But there is a good scene of jeopardy actually later on when Fox has been arrested under suspicion of causing all this. It turns out to be like the husband, but here's a moment of jeopardy where Lucy is in danger. Take a look at this.
What is it, Frank? Look at What's happening?
Grab him! Grab him! Grab him!
What's happening?
Okay. Listen to me. Call for the deputy and try to sound calm.
Deputy! I'm ready to leave now.
Stewart, where'd he go?
I think we got him.
So not a bad scene, and you at least get a sense of threat and drama. But I think you get the sense also from that scene, that there is just too much happening at times in this film. You know, you have to have the ghost involvement, the ghosts, essentially the good ghosts who are trying to help Frank, and also you have to have that Grim Reaper. Now, there's some very over the top scenes with him, or it, I should say, which really, I think at times there's definitely a charm to this film, and I did warm to it. But also, there's just times when it's hard to really follow what's going on, or it's hard to have that connection because it does feel like one long gimmick. I think probably what I would say about it is, at times it was just a little bit too wacky for its own good, and I think it could have done with slowing down. It could have done with having a bit more to the characters and the script, but I sort of like that in the end it does come down to being this quite straightforward romance, but with this supernatural element. There's this whole backstory about like this serial killer who died many years ago, and at the beginning of the film you see his ex-girlfriend who got involved with him sort of trapped in the house, and you've got this possessive sort of psychotic, I think it's meant to be a mother who's like keeping her there. And Lucy first gets wind of this because she's a doctor and visits the house, and there's a bit of a mystery element there, but that doesn't really go anywhere to the end. And I mean, not surprisingly, Jake Busey, who plays the dead serial killer, he turns out to be the guy behind all this, and there's also a personal link to Frank's past as well. But the stuff in the house, the stuff with the serial killer's girlfriend, and the mystery there just wasn't that compelling in the end. I think the best stuff is with Frank, with Lucy, and with Ray. And there are some fun set pieces. There's some decent black humour. There's actually quite an edgy line because you've got like an African American ghost, and at one point when they're all sort of getting frustrated with the way Frank treats them, he sort of makes this crack about, hey, if a black dude wanted to be shot at all the time, I would just go and live it with LA. So that's pretty edgy humour for this sort of film, and it definitely does have a black sort of humour to it, which I appreciated. But also, as I said, it definitely is hit and miss, and I think some people will just find it too much. But I thought the casting was solid, and I think there's a charm either to the weaker effects that have aged now, because obviously this film was a while ago, but some characters, like as I said, like the sergeant character, the sergeant ghost was just duo TT, and there's certain set pieces like with the flying babies which popped up there on screen, all that awful scene in the museum, which sort of takes you out of it and distracts you from. I guess the gimmick is the ghosts in many ways, but I just would have liked a bit more focus on the human characters. But hey, it's a pretty fun ride. I think it delivers a lot of thrills and spills, and has an old-fashioned energy and charm to it. So maybe not a classic Peter Jackson film, but a very enjoyable genre film with a good lead performance and a couple of other nicely cast performances. So overall, I'm going to be pretty positive. I'll give the Frighteners 6.5 out of 10. So let me know what you think of the film if you've seen it in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and I'll be back with more horror movie reviews soon. Thanks and goodbye.